With all due apologies to the members who are not here yet, I'm going to start because pretty soon we'll be going back into the session and be voting. So thank you very much, and I know that the members will be coming right quick, and when they come here, I will recognize them for their opening statements. So the joint subcommittees will come to order. After recognizing myself, Chairman Smith, Ranking Members Deutsch and Bass, as soon as they come for 5 minutes each for our opening statements, I will then recognize any other members seeking recognition for 1 minute. We will then hear from our witnesses, and without objection, the witnesses' prepared statements will be made a part of the record, and members may have 5 days in which to insert statements and questions for the record, subject to the length limitation in the rules. And before I begin my opening remarks, I want to take a moment to offer our most sincere condolences to the friends and family of Kayla Mueller. Our thoughts and prayers are with them in this most trying of times. Kayla was taken hostage while doing humanitarian work in Syria, which is the subject of our hearing, helping those who are in such dire need of her help, and all of America mourns her loss and the family's loss. The terrorists have proven time and again that they have no respect for human rights, and that is why we must redouble our efforts to defeat this scourge and its radical ideology. Kayla's legacy will be the work that she had done to alleviate the suffering of the countless many in Syria and around the world. It's important that our government will continue to respond to this humanitarian crisis, but also that we will make the respect for human rights across the globe a priority and not just an afterthought. And with that, the Chair now recognizes herself for 5 minutes. Next month will mark the 4th anniversary since the start of the Syrian conflict, and there are no signs that the crisis will abate anytime soon. Assad has demonstrated no remorse, and indeed his intransigence has only hardened as he maintains his grasp on power in the enclaves of Syria, thanks to the support from Iran and the United States' unwillingness to engage both ISIL and Assad in a comprehensive strategy. ISIL and other terror groups have managed to wrest control of other large areas of Syria, and they too have no intention of giving up the territory they have claimed. Since President Obama announced strikes against Syria last September, ISIL has actually gained more territory, and that leaves little territory for those Syrians who wish to flee the fighting and flee the violence. While we are seeing what we are seeing unfold in Syria is one of the worst humanitarian crises in the region in recent memory, and it isn't just limited to Syria and Iraq. Jordan and other neighboring countries have been forced to bear the brunt of a massive influx of refugees fleeing the fighting, and that's tested the limits of their already strained capabilities. Last Congress, the Ranking Member Ted Deutsch and I convened 4 hearings on the humanitarian situation in Syria. One, we were pleased to join with Congressman Smith and Congresswoman Bass subcommittee in an effort to continue to shine a light on this aspect of the conflict that gets ignored. When we held our first subcommittee hearing on the situation in Syria, 80,000 Syrians had been killed and 1.5 million people have been displaced. Less than 2 years later, those numbers have swelled. Over 200,000 have been killed, more than 3 million have fled, and now more than half of Syria's population is in dire need of humanitarian assistance. The U.S. has been the largest provider of humanitarian assistance in response to the crisis, providing much-needed aid to Syria, to Iraq, to Jordan, and other countries that have been severely impacted by this crisis. We've spent over $3 billion since the start of the conflict, and the President's budget request released last week is seeking an additional $1.6 billion to address the humanitarian needs in Syria and in Iraq. And while some of this goes directly to the neighboring countries that host refugees and directly to the NGOs, the vast majority of our funding for Syria supports multilateral initiatives through the United Nations. I worry that some of the assistance we provide that goes through the UN and its implementing partners might get diverted to ISIL or other terrorist groups or the Assad regime, by force or through bribes in order to gain access to certain areas. While I understand there are some very real and dangerous obstacles in place to reaching the maximum amount of people, Americans are concerned over where this $5 billion are going, especially if most of it could be going through third and fourth parties, as evidence shows that it is. There have been reports that some of the humanitarian assistance is going through middlemen in Syria when the implementing partners can't get access to the locations that they are trying to reach. And more recently, food rations have been handed out by the World Food Program, and they're tagged with the Islamic State symbol. So there are some very real and pressing problems that need to be corrected. Congress and the administration, we have a responsibility to the American public to be good stewards of their tax dollars. So it is imperative that we find the right balance of efficiency and transparency. Our comprehensive strategy towards Syria must take into effect the humanitarian crisis that we are confronting today. That's why it's so important. It's imperative that we hold these hearings not only to hear from the vital work that we are doing and the lives that we are saving, but also conduct our proper oversight role. It is also why I was joined this week by Ranking Member Deutsch, Mr. DeSantis, and Mr. Connolly in sending a request to the Government Accountability Office, GAO, requesting a report to ensure that our aid is reaching its intended recipients and to get a better understanding regarding our visibility into the large sums of money that we send through the UN. The Syrian humanitarian crisis is not a problem that is going away anytime soon, not until we defeat ISIL and Assad is removed from power, but the U.S. cannot afford to continue to provide billions indefinitely. It is imperative that we have confidence that what we are providing is not subject to waste, fraud, abuse, or diversion to terror groups so that we can continue playing a key role in responding to this crisis and maximize our effectiveness. And with that, I'm proud to yield to the ranking member of our subcommittee, Mr. Deutsch.